In the news tonight, His Majesty the King says all authorities need to work in partnership to address domestic issues and achieve development. Saudi-led airstrikes continue to target Yemen's Houthi rebels as fierce fighting rages for control of the southern city of Aden. And the Russian president says Greece's prime minister does not ask for financial aid during their talks in Moscow. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. His Majesty the King said a partnership involving all authorities should be bolstered to address domestic issues. Such cooperation, he stressed, should pay off and have an impact on the country and its citizens. King Abdullah also told Lower House Speaker Atif Tarawne and heads of the legislature's various committees that the panels are pivotal in the passage of key legislation as a national priority. His Majesty again called for endorsement of the Parliamentary Code of Conduct as key to upgrading the performance of the legislature and addressing all hindrance, including lack of quorum. The King told the meeting at Al Husseiniya Palace, attended by Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour, of the needs to boost dialogue with the government on key draft legislations at this important stage, namely the decentralization and municipality bills. The King reiterated that improving the citizens' living conditions, creating jobs and reducing unemployment and poverty remain top priorities. Also tackled at the meeting were economic challenges, foremost of which is diversifying energy sources and boosting vital sectors as agriculture. King Abdullah also said he was satisfied with the security situation in the kingdom's borders. He said Jordan's participation in the air military coalition in Yemen was made upon a request by the constitutional legitimacy in the country, represented by President Abd Rabbu Mansour Hadi, and to prevent external intervention in Yemen's affairs. He also said the war against terrorism and extremism is being fought by Jordan in defense of Islam, stressing a comprehensive military security and ideological approach to defeat the outlaws. He also stressed a political solution in Syria and also warned against a delay in finding a just and comprehensive solution to the Palestinian issue, stressing there is no alternative to the two-state solution. The House Speaker said the legislature stands in one trench with the other authorities and state institutions to address various domestic vows. He also gave a briefing on the House's achievement and the legislation that has been passed, pledging to work to upgrade its performance in the coming stage. The lawmakers also spoke about the key legislations on the agenda with emphasis on the economy. In his reply to the lawmakers, Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour stressed his government's desire to work with the lower house as one team. The Prime Minister pledged the cabinet will take note of all remarks by MPs and will follow up on issues raised during the meeting. Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour discussed with visiting Iraqi Defense Minister Khalid al-Ubaidi developments in Iraq and efforts to deal with terrorism. Al-Ubaidi thanked Jordan for its support of Iraq. Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs and Expatriate Affairs Nasser Joudeh assured the Iraqi Minister of Jordan's unwavering stance against terrorism, calling for coordination among all international partners to confront this danger. Jordan hosted a meeting for senior officials of the International Coalition Against Daesh terrorist gang. The meeting, co-chaired by Jordan and the United States, reviewed action by the military commissions set up at the London anti-Daesh meeting held in January, as well as funding of terrorist foreign fighters. The meeting dealt with the future plans of the Anti-Terror Committee. The Saudi-led aerial campaign against Yemen Houthi rebels is continuing, with several targets hit across the country. The warjet struck in the capital Sana'a, Aden, and Saada. Fighting was also raging between Houthi and militias loyal to President Abd Rabbu Mansour Hadi for control over the southern city of Aden. The fierce fighting is taking its toll on the humanitarian situation in the country, where thousands of Yemenis are fleeing to neighboring Saudi Arabia. Here's an update.
An office near a Houthi-run television channel in Sana'a is the latest target hit in the Saudi-led airstrikes. The strike adds to more Saudi-led bombing of Houthi positions and depots in the Yemeni capital. The extent of damage was yet to be known. Other air raids targeted the northern city of Sada, where a gas storage plant and a communication facility were damaged. These images show a huge crater, a wrecked building and a substantially damaged industrial unit. As the Saudi-led coalition stepped up the air campaign to dislodge the Houthis, fierce fighting between militias loyal to President Abd Rabbu Mansour Hadi and Houthi rebels and their allies escalated in the southern city of Aden. This video shows a pro-Hadi fighter wounded and crawling before being dragged to safety by his colleagues under a hail of gunfire. In the old quarter of Aden, Houthi forces fought street by street with local militia as the first boatloads of emergency medical aid arrived in the city, which aid workers say faces a humanitarian catastrophe. Residents saw a dozen bodies strewn on the streets and said several buildings were burnt or demolished by rocket fire. A political solution in Yemen is to be seen nowhere, at least for now, as the United States renewed its support to the Saudi-led military campaign.
With respect to Yemen, the United States is supporting the effort to get a political solution there that stops the violence at the same time that we're contributing to the Saudi efforts to protect its own security, which is a long-standing interest of the United States from a long-standing partner of the United States in the region.
The conflict in Yemen is taking its toll on civilians. This is the Atwal crossing on the Saudi-Yemeni border, where Yemeni refugees are lining up to stamp their passports to enter Saudi Arabia. This refugee tells of the dangers posed by the armed conflict.
ميليشيا الحوثية تهاجم
The Houthi militia are attacking people and residential areas, he says, and are infringing the rights of the people and their property. People are living in very dire conditions.
الناس عايشين في عيشة مزرية جدا.
Some countries have evacuated their nationals from Yemen. Today China sent 14 staff of its embassy there. The last group of Chinese nationals evacuated from the conflict-ridden country arrived in Beijing. Radha Bush for the news at 10.
Some 91 Jordanians have crossed into Saudi Arabia from Yemen by land. Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Expatriate Affairs spokesperson Sabah al-Rafi'i said a total of 567 Jordanian nationals have been evacuated from Yemen in cooperation with Saudi authorities. She said the ministry is working around the clock to ensure all Jordanians are brought out of war-torn Yemen in coordination with all concerned parties. The situation inside the Palestinian refugee camp of Yarmouk in the Syrian capital is dire. The camp lies in ruins after it was recently overrun by Daesh militants. The streets in the camp located on the outskirts of Damascus are laid in rubble. Yarmouk was home to 500,000 Palestinians before the Syrian conflict began in 2011. Now, there's only thousands left. The Palestinian official inside the camp said things had turned worse since the takeover by Daesh terrorist group.
الموضوع الرئيسي الآن
The important thing now is Syrian government's responsibility and Syrian sovereignty on Syrian territories, as well as Syria's responsibility to maintain security and stability and the protection of citizens, whether they be Palestinians or Syrian. Now the responsibility is in the hands of the Syrian government, and whatever decision the Syrian government takes will be supported by the Palestinian leadership and Palestinian Liberation Organization.
Meanwhile, Russia is due to host this week a 4-day meeting to focus on humanitarian issues with the participation of Syrian opposition and representatives of the Syrian regime. The Syrian National Coalition has previously boycotted the meeting, saying it would take part only if the talks led by the departure of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said the West and the Syrian opposition are moving closer to holding talks with the Syrian president, which marked a change in tone by the opposition. Iraqi security forces launched a new offensive against Daesh militants in the headland of Anbar province. The Iraqi government is seeking to build on last week's victory over the terror group in the city of Tikrit. Official sources said fighting began in the western province's desert terrain as Prime Minister Haidar al-Abadi was touring Anbar, visiting Iraqi army units and pro-government Sunnis. al-Abadi was expected to address the nation from Anbar later in the day. Army officers said Daesh militants were driven back in the Sijiriya area east of Ramadi and Fallujah. The Anbar region, two key cities where Daesh has been dominant. Military sources said Daesh was retreating from Sijiriya, trading mortar fire with government forces. A senior Iraqi officer in Ramadi said the purpose of clearing Sijiriya was to secure supply routes to the nearby Rabaniya airbase and to weaken the militants' grip on territory connecting Ramadi and Fallujah. Israeli forces shot and killed a Palestinian youth north of Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. The Israeli military said the Palestinian minor stabbed two Israeli soldiers on a road near the Jewish settlement of Shiloh, north of Ramallah. It said one soldier was stabbed in the neck and was critically injured, while the other sustained minor injuries. It said soldiers on the scene shot and killed the young Palestinian. Israeli army forces and ambulances arrived at the scene to administer first aid to the soldiers, who were then flown by helicopter to Israeli hospitals. Russian President Vladimir Putin said Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras did not ask for financial aid at talks in Moscow. But the Russian leader said his country could provide credits for large joint projects with Greece in the future. Putin indicated that one such project might be the planned Turkish steam pipeline to carry natural gas to Europe via Turkey. Here's more.
It's the meeting that raised eyebrows in Brussels, and now Russian President Vladimir Putin says business with Greece could be open.
The Greek side has not addressed us with any requests for aid. We discussed cooperation in various sectors of the economy, including the possibility of developing major energy projects.
Russia says it could provide credit for joint projects with Greece in the future. Greece would then pay back any loans from profits made, with privatization deals in Greece being of particular interest to Moscow. Putin said the pair also discussed Athens' possible participation in the Turkish Stream pipeline project. Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras denied he's turning to Russia for financial assistance. Schroeder's Azad Zangana.
I think Greece is trying to use the relationship with Russia as a bargaining chip with the rest of the European Union, and they're hoping that the European Union would rather bail Greece out in the near term to avoid a solidifying of that relationship with Russia going forward.
The European Parliament has warned Tsipras not to break from the EU line on sanctions towards Russia over its role in the Ukraine crisis. Greece's debt crisis continues to dog the new government, which promised an end to austerity. Greece has promised to make a €450 million payment to the IMF on Thursday, but is fast running out of money. It cannot access new bailout funds until creditors agree to a package of reforms.
Demonstrators rallied in the U.S. state of South Carolina against what they described as a culture of police brutality. They were protesting after a white officer was caught on video killing a black man by shooting him in the back as the man ran away after a traffic stop. Dozens of protesters in North Charleston said the death of 50-year-old Walter Scott on Saturday should not be viewed as an isolated incident. The police officer, Michael Slager, was charged with murder in the death. Scott was the latest among several shootings over the past year, including New York, Ferguson, Missouri, Cleveland, Ohio, and other places. The shooting has stirred debate across the United States about police use of lethal force and race relations, also drawing President Barack Obama into the discussion. The FBI and U.S. Department of Justice are investigating Scott's shooting. Civil rights leaders have called for calm. Moroccan Rashid El Morabiti and Elisabeth Barnes of Sweden continued their domination of the Marathon des Sables as they both claimed their third consecutive stage victories. In temperatures well in excess of 30 degrees Celsius, El Morabiti completed the 36.7-kilometer third stage from Jabal El Otfal to Jabal Zigreg in Moroccan desert in 2 hours, 53 minutes and 37 seconds, finishing 2.31 ahead of compatriot Abdelkader El Muaziz, with Salam Al Aqra of Jordan third. In the women's event, Barnes covered the course in 3 hours, 48 minutes and 54 seconds, well clear of Frenchwoman Laurence Klein in second place, and Elizabeth Howard of the United States took third place. Michael Schumacher's teenager son follows his dad in his racing tracks. Mick Schumacher started pre-session testing in Formula 4 car in Germany after moving up from karting. The 16-year-old son of 7-time Formula 1 champion Michael Schumacher will be racing for the first time under the family name. Michael Schumacher is still recovering from severe head injuries sustained in a skiing accident in 2013. Mick was running up in the last season's World, European and German karting championships, which helped him get his season drive in Formula 4 with Dutch outfit Van Amersfoort Racing. The Formula 4 season will begin on April 25th. Finally, let's have a look at the weather forecast. Fair and dusty weather will prevail tonight in most areas, with high clouds and southwesterly brisk winds. Dusty and dry Khamaseen conditions will continue to affect the country tomorrow, but a tangible drop in temperature is due in the forecast, with light showers expected across the northern and central regions, especially during night hours. Warm and dusty weather is also in the forecast for Jordan Valley and the port of Aqaba. Winds in Aqaba will be northerly brisk and seas slightly choppy. The weatherman warns of poor visibility tonight and tomorrow due to dust. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. And to end the news, here's a recap of our top stories. His Majesty the King says all authorities need to work in a partnership to address domestic issues and achieve development. Saudi-led airstrikes continue to target Yemen Houthi rebels as fierce fighting rages for control of the southern city of Aden. And the Russian president says Greece's prime minister does not ask for financial aid during their talks in Moscow. And with this we come to an end. I'm Farah Ajlouni. Thank you for watching. Have a good night.